You know how they talk about Michael Jordan, that he needed to be mad to be great? And so he would find someone on the court to be really pissed at.
Yes,
and then
indeed.
he would play better. I think on some level, that's what I did.
It is on.
Hi, everyone. Today, I'm speaking to legendary comedian, writer, director, and producer Judd Apatow. He's responsible for raunchy comedic hits like The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Anchorman, Anchorman 2, which is a better one, and Bridesmaids. I love his films. I've seen all of them. I watched them when they were being made at the time. And I really think it's important to talk to him now at a time when comedy is really challenged, especially from not just from politics and President Trump, but also from new technology like AI. He's sort of the OG in terms of comedy of recent ages, and he has been mentor to so many people who are working now. This is a really fun one, so keep watching. Judd, thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here.
Let me ask you a question. Is it a funny time we're in right now?
Is it funny?
Yeah.
No, it's not funny. I don't think. I'm not laughing at most any of it. It's a
Right.
weird time to create comedy because you feel like we should just be talking about what's happening,
Right.
and not like, it's hard to get a date, or whatever
Yeah.
your movie stories are. It
Right.
feels like there's more pressing things happening, but we still need that. That's the tricky part.
Right.
We still need joy and distraction and entertainment and creativity, but it's hard to focus, when you see things happening that are troubling.
The reason I'm asking this, I was at a party this weekend, and it was a fun party. It was for an anniversary, friends of mine, their 20th wedding anniversary. And they started with, it feels like we shouldn't be having a party or fun right now. You know what I mean? Or nothing
Yeah.
is funny. And so it's really hard to deal with that impulse of kind of sillier things or things that were part of comedy before, that you don't have to immediately deal with only tearing down the White House or whatever manner of horror is happening at any given day.
Well, I think there's always been terrible things happening all through history, and now a lot of them are revealed and illuminated, and a lot of this type of thing has always been happening. And so it makes us all feel like, how are we supposed to behave? What are we supposed to do? And part of what we do is live our lives and be happy and be kind to our friends and our families and ourselves, and look for opportunities to get involved and try to move things in a direction that aligns with our values. So that's what we all have to do. We have no choice. It's a long day. There's 24 hours in a day. So we can't just be troubled every second of it.
No, and definitely the Middle Ages sucked. So let's dive right into it. In your book, Comedy Nerd, you say that almost all stories are about obstacles to love. Now, most comedy fans probably wouldn't come up with obstacles to love if they had to describe Judd Apatow movies. But some of the movies you directed, like The 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, This Is 40, Trainwreck, the through line is obvious. Talk about that a little bit. And how has your understanding of what love means changed over the years making these movies?
Well, I never thought about any of this when I started. I was just trying to write jokes. And so, the beginning of any comedy person's career is just, how do you make that crowd laugh? I was doing stand-up, and I didn't really think very deeply. I didn't think emotionally. I was just trying to survive up there and not get booed off the stage. And then, when I worked for Garry Shandling, we were doing the Larry Sanders Show, which was a satire
Great
of
show.
talk shows.
Mhm.
And he said, this is just a show about people who love each other, but work and ego get in the way.
Mhm.
And I had never heard anyone talk about stories in that way. The
Mhm.
idea that your career and how you feel about yourself is so important that you'll do all these terrible things to support your brokenness and your need for approval, and that
Mhm.
was the comedy of the show. But underneath,
Right.
you knew they loved each other, and they were just all kind of blocked by this.
Right.
And slowly I realized, that's true of almost every situation, right? We have conflicting impulses to either help people or try to do something selfish for ourselves. That's why this period is very troubling for people, because it's really driven by a lot of people on all sides with endless need and narcissism and gluttony. And not a lot of it feels like they're really looking out for other people.
Right, right, absolutely. But talk a little more about this obstacle to love. That's sort of in the broad sense, which it's not just work, it's all kinds of obstacles to love, correct?
Yeah, I mean, an obstacle to love can just be like your fear of being loved, your fear of making a mistake, your fear of having your career not work. I mean, it's endless. It's very hard to stay open and connected and to be there for somebody else. So in any of the movies, you know, a lot of them are about like two people trying to decide if it's going to work. So, Knocked Up is about, a man and a woman, and they accidentally get pregnant. And could we be a couple? Like, could we raise this baby together? I guess we should find out and hang out a little bit before we go our separate ways, as they assess each other. Like, is this dangerous or could it be positive?
So let's talk a little bit about the book itself and your start in comedy, because this is sort of your journey, essentially. And you write in the book about, even from an early age, you had an obsession with comedy. You would collect autographs and memorabilia. You would go to the library to look up articles about comedians on microfiche and kids. Microfiche was so cool. Yeah, both of us are of the age that we use. I love
Kids
microfiche.
love microfiche. I mean, what is the internet except a giant microfiche system?
It is, but it didn't have that sound of and getting it wrong and mangling it. I just explained, I was teaching a course at University of Michigan. I was explaining card catalogs to the kids. They were like, what? I was like, it was hard to even explain. Anyway, you wrote a 30-page research paper on the Marx Brothers, and this is when you were in sixth grade. Your parents went through a messy divorce when you were young, and you write that they didn't ask you how you were doing, so you looked to comedy to explain the world in the way that it was. But it was also a way to cope. Talk a little bit about this earlier history that you were just enmeshed in it, eating and breathing it, but it gave you comfort, right?
I mean, just like, some people, when they're young and they're feeling disaffected, they might get into a band, or a songwriter and become obsessed with it. For me, growing up, starting in the mid-'70s, it was the beginning of Saturday Night Live and Monty Python and SCTV and Steve Martin and Richard Pryor and Carlin. And so I think I always looked for the answers of what was going on in the world through comedic voices. Listening to George Carlin, he was breaking everything down and also making you question the system, questioning how society works. And I think as a little kid, I was just fascinated to hear, this person explain something to me, which I knew absolutely nothing about. And then that grew into like, who is this Lenny Bruce guy? And reading that book, Ladies and Gentlemen, Lenny Bruce, which talked about that era. And then I just couldn't get enough of it. I mean, and so maybe as a result of, going through a rough divorce as a kid, I needed something to be my own. And it also was like safety, maybe I can get a job doing this. Like, there's a way to take care of myself in the world. And also, no one was into it. So there weren't other people who loved comedy like I did. So I think in my head, I thought, I think I can get a job doing this because there's no competition.
Nobody's
at least in my
interested.
head. Yeah, no one cares about this at all.
Were you a funny kid? I mean, you wrote a 30-page research report on Marx Brothers. I mean, that's kind of a choice.
That is a nerdy thing. And I look back on that, and it's really strange to me. Having raised two children, if my kids sat in their room writing a 30-page, biography of the Marx Brothers that no one requested, but I just wanted to know because I love the anarchy of the Marx Brothers, and they were so funny, and I knew I didn't quite understand what all the jokes meant, but that it felt like, oh, this is the best stuff. I didn't know it was the greatest writers in the world writing these silly movies, but I would read all the books, and so the book that I made, it is a little bit of a tribute to the Marx Brothers scrapbook. Because when I was a kid, that was the book that had all the articles and the photos and the memorabilia. And I thought, what if I took all the memorabilia and the ephemera and the notes from the studio and all these weird things and created a book that would be like an autobiography, but with these visuals. Yeah. And so I spent like 2 years putting that together, which in a way is the Marx Brothers biography. I finally did it on myself.
Yeah. You remember the SNL book? There
Yes,
was one.
as an book.
I
Yeah,
love
because
that
you
book.
thought, how did they make this show? Who are these people?
And it
they
was the
put out a
scripts with
book.
coffee on it, coffee
Yeah.
stains. I
And
read
they would
that
have
over and
all
over
the
again.
notes from, like, you got a call from, Gerald Ford administration, and little
Right.
jokes. And I wanted to know those people. So I think also
Mhm.
in my head, I thought, oh, there's like a group of people somewhere that are really funny and cool. How
Mhm.
can I get to a place where they'll allow me in?
So, as a writer, director, and producer, you've created some of the most successful comedies, obviously so well known, and you've collaborated on some of the most talented comedic actors and writers in the country. The first show a lot of people associate you with, obviously, the one that kind of launched your career was Freaks and Geeks. NBC canceled it partway through the first season, but it's found a huge following since. There's a lot of shows like that. But you said in 2014, everything I've done in a way is a revenge for the people who canceled Freaks and Geeks. Talk about what that show that's given the staying power and that motivation for you.
I mean, I think that, Paul Feig, who created the show, had a very clear vision inspired by growing up in Michigan about the kids who he didn't see on TV, which was nerds and potheads. And I remember he gave me the script. He didn't tell me anything about it. One day he just like handed it to me. And I saw the cover and just said Freaks and Geeks. And I was just so in the second that I saw the title. And it's so brutally truthful that I do think it just like gets in your craw and doesn't come out, because a lot of it was about failure and how we lean on our families and our friends to survive things. And obviously it was a magical cast, and the directors and writers, did remarkable work. But I think some of those stories are so real. There was an episode that our friend Jeff Judah wrote about his childhood with his partner Gabe Sachs, about a kid who is watching, based on a true story, was watching Donahue, and it was all about how to know if your husband's cheating. And the kid realized that the dad was cheating, and so he found a garage clicker in the car that wasn't theirs, and so he would ride around on his bike, clicking it at houses, seeing if he could figure out who his dad was cheating with. And that came from a very personal place. And we made that episode, and as a result, it's really powerful. And a lot of the episodes were built that way. Even the funny ones, like John Daly in the Parisian night suit that he thinks is going to look cool walking down the hall, but it's the most embarrassing outfit ever. That's something that happened to Paul Feig, and so it really was about a different type of feeling. And it was almost independent film on television. It was pre-streaming. And so it was a vibe that you didn't get. And so it didn't last very long, but it touched people.
Right, absolutely. Cowlnex was my issue many years ago. But there's a contrast, as you said. It was airing around the time of Dawson's Creek, in the wake of 90210, right before the OC. The Contract, it was sort of a counterweight to those kind of shows about high school.
Yes, it was. It was meant to say, like, it usually doesn't work out like that, and that's okay. So at one point, the studio kept asking us to give them more wins. They need more wins, and we said this show is about losing.
What did you say when you got that note? What did you say? Like, you need more wins.
This kind of tells you like how I would handle those notes, because I was very young and I didn't know how to have these debates without getting aggressive or just managing it in the wrong way. We were asked to have more wins, so we wrote an episode where Martin Starr's character Bill is playing baseball, and he's always picked last. So it's about being picked last and the daily humiliation of that.
Yes, the Janice Ian of it all. But go ahead.
And so the ball flies to him in right field, and no ball ever comes to him in right field, and he catches it. And everyone goes crazy, but he doesn't know that there's only one out so far. And the person on third, tags up and runs home and scores, because he's celebrating, and he actually doesn't understand the rules of the game. So
not a win.
That was not the win. And we loved the fact that we had tricked the studio into having the fake win. But when we were canceled, it was funny. We get canceled, and then years later, they do a documentary about the show, and they interviewed the guy who canceled us, and he was happy that he canceled us. He stood by it. He didn't go, looking back, I shouldn't have done that. He literally was like, yeah, that was a good decision. He said, I was watching this show where the nerdy kid breaks up with the cheerleader. And I said, yeah, that's enough of that. But to us, that was the ultimate triumph, was that there was an episode where Sam Weir, he is dating the cheerleader Cindy Sanders, and he takes her to see the Steve Martin movie, The Jerk, and she thinks it's not funny. And so he breaks up with her because he realizes that she's not actually right for him. So, which is the appropriate thing to do. But, to a network wanting those wins, they thought that's the craziest thing anyone's ever done on TV.
Yeah. Should you have given your characters even little wins, more wins? Was that note ever good?
Well, I think the win really was their great friendships with each other, just how much they cared about each other. And a big win also was that Sam and Lindsay loved their parents. It wasn't a show about, rebelling against your parents. It was just the normal things that happen as you grow up. And a lot of laughter, a lot of like nerds laughing and, really like enjoying each other's company and feeling like, we're the oppressed. And also what made us laugh is that the nerds always knew that they were cooler than the jocks. They just, it just wasn't their time.
Right. Exactly. It's funny because I bet that guy who canceled you probably didn't want to relive his experiences from high school and therefore canceled you. Every episode we get a question from an outside expert. Here is yours.
Well, hello, Judd. It is I, Jane Lynch, your old pal. Question for you. After Freaks and Geeks and Undeclared, both of them, which are now cult classics and were critical successes, but they were canceled after one season each. How did you navigate that emotionally, and what did it do to your self-confidence and your view of yourself in this business? Because you went on to take a really big swing right after that and direct your first feature film, The 40-Year-Old Virgin. So that's my question. Sending you lots of love.
Jane is great. Jane was in The 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Yes.
The best.
And,
the best.
Yeah, so we did Talladega Nights with her and Walk Hard. She's so funny. So how did I handle that? Well, it really was painful. When we were doing Freaks and Geeks, I always had a sense that this is special, like this is our group. And the idea that the show would end and separate us.
I've made it, right? And I've made it because there's so much rejection.
So, so on one level, it's like, this is the great group. I love all these people, and we haven't finished telling this story. So that's such a terrible feeling when someone could just walk in the room and go, okay, stop doing this thing that's working and never talk to each other ever again. And it just felt so wrong to me. Also, as a child of divorce, I projected all those abandonment issues onto that relationship with the network and the studios. And I thought, wait, magic's happening here. This is like going into a recording studio and just unplugging Led Zeppelin in the middle of recording a great song. And then we did a show called Undeclared about college with a lot of the same people, and then the same exact thing happened. We were canceled after 17 episodes. And I mean, I got so stressed. My back went out. I had to have like surgery on my back just from the stress. And I was probably not at my best in my communication skills. So what I did was suffer. I mainly just suffered. And you know how they talk about Michael Jordan, that he needed to be mad to be great. And so he would find someone on the court to be really pissed at.
Yes,
and then
indeed.
he would play better. And it was very manufactured a lot of the time. I think on some level, that's what I did. I just thought the best revenge for this is to prove that each of these people here deserves a really big opportunity and career. And I loved them and believed in them and wanted to stay connected. And then they did it. Then all those people went on to amazing careers as writers and directors and actors and actresses. But it was almost like a manic state. Like it's only something you would do when you're like young and just full of it, to make that attempt and to have so much energy to do it. But also they were also talented. They really had
but
the
what did you
goods.
do, as she asked, how did you navigate it emotionally, and where did the self-confidence come to move along?
I knew the work was good. As a fan of comedy, and I think I do come to it as a fan first, I knew how good Freaks and Geeks was, and I knew how good everyone was. I had no doubt that, a lot of these people were better actors and comedy stars, than were around for the most part. So I had a lot of confidence in that. And I also think I had a little bit of the rebellion of someone who loves a band that
Mhm.
no one listens to in massive numbers. I would love all those, alternative bands that didn't sell a crazy amount of records.
Mhm.
I was an Elvis Costello fan, and
Mhm.
he had a big crowd, but he wasn't Whitney Houston at that
Right.
time. And I
Right.
just thought it's okay to be Elvis Costello. It's okay to be
Mhm.
the Replacements. And there
Mhm.
was almost a badge of honor in making something great that isn't big the way like John Cassavetes movies didn't make $100 million.
Mhm. Right.
That's
So
how
you
I rationalized my
Right.
multiple failures.
Right. So, like Jane mentioned, you then went on to make huge hits and take this swing. You wrote, directed, and produced movies like 40-Year-Old Virgin and Knocked Up, and you produced Girls, Anchorman 2, which is my son's favorite movie, Trainwreck, Bridesmaids, Step Brothers, all these kind of fit in a mold that became your calling card, raunchy, mainly R-rated comedies about extended adolescence and growing up. And if you take a step back, what do you think you got right about them in that mid to late 2000s era, and especially about men in particular, because they often centered on men developing themselves, good men developing themselves, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is we grew up on these Ivan Reitman, John Landis, Harold Ramis movies. And that usually was the core of why they worked. It was a reluctant hero story. So we definitely had an awareness that like men are really immature and need a little bit of a beating to get it,
Mhm.
to grow up. And so some of those movies are about, the challenges of real life intruding. Like, I just want to
Mhm.
be a pothead and have a porn website, but I just
Right.
got someone pregnant and now I have to become a man.
Yeah.
So
And read these
I
books, and read these
and
books.
read
These
and read the
fine-
baby books. And I
Right.
I think that as I look at it now, I remember I used to talk to Norman Lear, about his history and his childhood, and his dad went to prison when he was a kid for this like stock fraud,
Mhm.
and he was still talking about it at 100, like
Mhm.
his emotional
Of course.
problems that resulted from dealing with his dad. So I realized, yeah, these movies are coming of age movies in a way, uh, but also we're always coming of age. I don't think it ever ends. So if I do This Is 40, it's just another phase of how hard it is to learn the lessons of life and how much has to happen to you for you to begin to get it at all.
Mhm. And the through line for you there was of those, if there is one at all, of those movies.
I mean, the through line for me is, life is suffering and we soldier on. That it's like there's a lot of challenges and it works best when we're kind to each other and we figure out how to be there for each other. And you take a lot of hits. The hits are funny. That's what we like in these movies. But for me, you know, when I'm working with a writer on their script, I always say to them, okay, what's the problem and what would have to happen to this character for them to learn the lesson? Like, what bottom would they have to hit to wake up?
Let's move to today, comedy now,
Okay.
because everything has shifted. I mean, you had a series of movies, and sort of the system worked really well for
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
One of the obviously the biggest changes has been the move to streaming, away from big theater releases. It's been especially true in comedy, and since the pandemic, comedies don't pull in the same kind of box office revenue they used to. And you told Variety a few years ago, "quote We have a system now that does not reward success for a lot of these projects. If you make something and 1 billion people watch, you don't make more money than if it was a disaster. That's not good for creativity." Talk a little bit about the shifts. Here you are sort of running from movie to movie to movie, and in a system that then shifted dramatically for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the first change of the system was that the DVD disappeared. And a lot of the economics of comedy were very simple, which is you could make a movie for $20 million. And if it made $40 million in the box office, it would usually make $40 million on DVD. So suddenly that investment would pay off. Now we don't have the DVD money, and it wasn't really replaced significantly by streaming and digital downloads. That only covered a part of it when that changed. So as a result, the bet is different. And with comedy, there's usually the discussion about whether or not it will work overseas in non-English speaking countries. So an action movie might work great in Bulgaria, but often, because of language issues or cultural issues,
Sure.
it's not as consistent that comedies will work overseas.
I remember being in Germany watching Wayne's World, and
Yeah.
monkeys fly out of my butt. It's
Yeah.
translated into German. I was sitting and I was laughing hysterically when he said that, and the Germans were like, "Bus, monkeys, what, like in
Exactly.
German," and I was like, "Oh, I can't explain it to you. Monkeys,
Yes.
they're not actually flying out of us." And then it was lost. Then it was done. Then we were done with the thing.
I remember they weren't going to release Bridesmaids overseas because they said they don't have bridesmaids in most of these countries. And then they did, and it made, $100 and something million overseas. So there's tons of exceptions to this where, there are giant breakthrough movies. But that changed the bet because then it became easier to make a $5 million horror movie, which would work in Bulgaria, than a comedy. And then when you start making less comedies, then people lose the habit of going. And
Mhm.
at the same time, there's a lot of comedy on streaming that you don't have to leave the house for. And on your phone, you're basically watching gags all day long.
Right.
All day long,
the
you're looking at the
snackable
phone.
moments, right? The
Yeah.
snackable, the only the best jokes, right? You're only eating
they're,
the choice
they're
bits.
great. They're great.
Mhm.
I could watch a montage of like cats scaring their owners for hours.
Yeah.
And so it's not like on the weekend, you're like, oh God, I need some comedy. I mean, literally, you were probably in Starbucks looking at TikTok videos for
Right.
15
Right.
minutes.
Please, by all means, search cats and tinfoil if you want
Yes.
some of
Oh,
that
yeah, exactly.
entertainment.
Pickles.
But
I mean,
pickles.
so then you go, what's the need? On the weekend, you might go, oh, I want to see a horror movie because I haven't seen anyone get killed this week. I want a thriller and it changes habits, but also those habits change back. If somebody made The Hangover or something as good as The Hangover, I still think it would make $1 billion. I don't feel like there's been gigantic, great comedies that have failed because people don't want to go to the theater. I think we're not making them. And as a result, young people go, wait, there's no money in this. And then they write for YouTube or TikTok or
Or
get a job
horror,
as
or
a
Jason
staff writer on
Blum, or
it.
whatever.
Yeah, I think it changes the career aspirations of people. And then you get a little bit of a doom loop going.
Mhm. Right.
And so hopefully, but I remember when that movie came out, it was like maybe a Roman Polanski movie called Pirates. And it was just such a
Mhm.
gigantic bomb. It was with Walter Matthau.
Mhm.
And for decades, people said the worst thing you ever could do is a pirate movie.
Mhm.
And then, decades later, Pirates of the Caribbean was like the biggest thing forever. And I think that's how show business works. You need something to be a hit, and then they chase it for a while. And it kind of cycles.
But streaming in particular, and you were just noting a lot of looking at TikTok and the pulling apart and the snackable moments. Is comedy just by nature very vulnerable in that regard? When everything becomes little bits. I'm thinking of late night television. It does really well online, but the ratings don't work. Kind of.
Well, I think another issue is that in some ways horror movies are comedies. They usually have an enormous amount of humor. Weapons, in the theater gets gigantic laughs. And movies like Barbie, they are just comedies. The Marvel movies are comedies. They're also action movies, but they definitely are going for the comedy. So it's not like comedy has disappeared. It's just kind of morphed in with other genres where they all use comedy. So I do think people want it. It's just mutated. And then you do need breakthroughs. You need people to do something very original to show how a comedy should work in 2025. It doesn't have to feel like, The Reluctant Astronaut with Don Knotts. You do have to take risks. And you also need a new generation of comedy people, because if you don't make a lot of comedy movies, then the next generation never gets their break. And then suddenly people go, we need a comedy star. And everyone goes, wait, but we haven't broken one in 10 years because we haven't given anyone an opportunity to show that they're a comedy star.
Or they break somewhere else. I did a great interview with Josh Johnson, who got his start on the internet.
Yeah.
A lot of them are getting their starts elsewhere, right? And in different genres that they seem to be very native in some fashion.
Well, Josh is doing something that's really spectacular, which is...
Oh, it has to be excellent to start. But
he's so funny, but he's putting up basically full-length comedy specials every few weeks that
Mhm.
feel like he's been working on the set for years, but they're about things that are happening currently in politics, and it's really remarkable. So yeah, some people are inventing new ways to be funny and do it. And the one thing that is bad about the podcasting is it's allowing people not to be funny in a way that someone like Conan O'Brien or Letterman was funny, in terms of being inventive and sketches and grinding for all of these new ideas, because two people talking is fun, but we're not getting a lot of people going, I'm going to use this format to come up with something completely new that requires writing, that requires shooting things. And so
it's easier. It's easier.
It's way easier, and we need some lunatics to do it the harder way.
Speaking of that, you're talking about the next generation of stars. In a foreword to your book, Lena Dunham wrote about the creative freedom you gave her to do risky things, which was making Girls, which you executive produced, and how rare that was. Talk about who's helping people take that, what you're just talking about, this kind of risk, because your longtime collaborator, Seth Rogen, just won a whole bunch of Emmys for his show, The Studio. At its core, it's about how the industry has come so averse to taking all kinds of risks needed to make art. And it's funny, though it's funny, but it's also, there's something deeply sad about the show too. Like, look at this. Look at these people sort of pretzeling themselves to be not excellent, essentially. Talk about that, the who's helping people take those kind of risks, and what you did with Lena.
Well, certainly Seth is, with his show and the people and the writers that he's working with, and the people who perform on it. And he is exploring what this challenge is, which is, in a world where everything needs to be gigantic, there's all this pressure. A lot of the movies we liked best, that were the biggest movies of all time, were little movies, and they were little risks. And as a result, you would get whatever, The Last Detail or Midnight Cowboy, and now people want everything to be able to make an insane amount of money, and that's why that show is so funny, because it is about people who want to make good movies, and they're trying to figure out how to work in a system that has so many demands that are very difficult to figure out. In the old days, it always felt simpler to me. I always thought it was like, the studio would have, say they had 9 movies, 3 they were going for like the mega movie, 3 were like these kind of dramas, mid-level costs, and 3 were like horror and comedy. And it kind of made sense as the ratio of things. Like, okay, they have a couple of slots for high end, a couple of slots for popcorn, a couple of slots for the comedies and the horror things. And now it's like, as soon as a movie could make $1 billion, then in a lot of ways, that's like, for the majority of it, it's the hope that things could just, be a big hit, become a toy, work in every country in the world, have sequels. And so a lot of the intellectual energy, the bandwidth, goes to that, which makes sense. But you need more bandwidth on, let's just make new things. Let's take chances. Let's figure out the next stage of this. And so hopefully that will change. And things do sneak through all the time. There are a lot of amazing movies came out this year,
They did. I'm not, but they, of course, they were more successful because they felt original. One of the things that I'm just recalling is an interview with Ted Sarandos, and he said there will be no middle movies anymore. He said there'll be the small movies and the big movies, and everything in the middle will be hollowed out, which is what you're talking about. And he was talking about comedies. He was talking about sort of the middle of the range, because of the way the system was setting itself up. But how do you then mentor people or give people freedom? You don't really have freedom if you're in a formula, correct? Whatever the formula may be.
I mean, for me, in terms of mentorship, I was mentored by people like Garry and David Milch and Eric Roth and people like that. And, so I look for opportunities to help people with their projects. Sometimes I'm part of the project. Sometimes it's just as a friend. And I think that that's essential, to getting better, is to find people that have some wisdom that you don't have. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do anything without it. And even now, sometimes I write a script and I just wish Garry Shandling was still alive, because just the fact that he liked something I was working on gave me the confidence to not give up on it. Like, oh, Garry thinks this is worth pursuing. And so I would keep grinding because of it.
Hollywood is also grappling with the arrival of AI. It's something I write and talk about a lot. And it was a massive issue in the 2023 writers' strike. You told Variety the studios and streamers weren't treating writers as essential and that it was coding existential problems. Screenwriters did win a bunch of protections against AI in the fight, but AI isn't going anywhere. And obviously, it's even going further with tech billionaires spending billions on energy and compute. And Sora 2 just came out. And it will keep being an issue of future contract negotiations. Talk a little bit about how you're looking at it as a creator, because one of the things, I had a lot of discussions with Hollywood people during these things, and I said, you don't understand who your real enemy is. It's not Disney, it's Google or OpenAI or whoever it happens to be. How do you think about it right now?
I mean, I look at it like any other factory, right? So if Tesla's opening up a factory, then they're just trying to figure out how few human beings can I use to have it function. And there's all sorts of entities that are thinking that right now about everything to do with film and television production. Can I do this without people? Can it get written without people? Can it get directed without people? Do we need the development people? To every end of it, there were great Black Mirrors about this, where they were creating content specifically for people in real time. And so that's scary. And the only thing that makes it less scary is that it's soulless.
Right. It's not funny.
It's not good. There are definitely ways that technology can help people. If you can go on a computer and make it look like deep space and it doesn't cost $3 million, it costs 40 grand. Well, clearly in some ways that will help people. It will decimate the people that made space, but it seems like we're not going to be able to stop that when it gets cheaper. But the writing and the directing will always wind up generic because it's scraped and it's just copying other things. And I think even when Sora was released, we instantly thought, wow, I'm bored of this in like a day and a half. I can't watch any more of dead celebrities doing weird things.
So can AI be funny?
Yeah. It's not that it would be wrong to say it can't be funny at all, but there's no point of view. So it doesn't ever fully work. You know how like when you watch these things and it feels like this bizarre dreamlike space and it feels like hell, a lot of the AI stuff. At some point, if you know how to use it, I assume it'll become like a Pixar movie where it's basically animation.
Yeah, the back end is where the real wins are right now.
Yeah, and so there'll be some fusion, and then there will be people who are like, you know what, I like it when the real people do it. And it'll become a mix at some point. But, no one's going to make the movie that Paul Thomas Anderson just made on Sora.
No.
No one's going to do, what Nicole Holofcener does or Quentin Tarantino. So, but it's going to be a lot of just slop and garbage. And it's scarier for the next generation that doesn't know what good movies that are authentic, made from people's hearts, what that is. Like if you were raised on the slop, at some point do people not care about what's
they're used to slop. They're used to slop.
Yeah. I think that probably they will, but that's what's scary if you don't know the difference and you just go, no, this seems fine.
So on top of all these changes, there's also been a broader cultural shift towards more censorship. You have folks like Dave Chappelle, Bill Maher, and Ricky Gervais, who said cancel culture is hurting comedy and breeds censorship. On the other hand, there's people like Sarah Silverman and Seth Rogen who say these fears are overblown. Comedy changes, stop whining. It knocked up the lead characters working on a site that tells people where all the nude scenes are in popular movies. And you write that, quote, looking back, it is 100 types of wrong, both morally and technologically, but it still makes me laugh. Talk about that and how you're looking at the risks as people grapple with what's offensive and what's not.
I think that, when we would do jokes like the one you're talking about in the movie, the point was, this is wrong and ridiculous. This is something you should grow out of. So we would always show bad behavior as a path to showing how you would realize that you shouldn't have the porn site that just tells you where the nude scenes are. Although the technology that is funny, like that movie is so old now that even the technology of it tells you like where it is, where now it would just show you. And, but I do think that, there's a couple of issues. in terms of cancel culture, there are not many people whose careers were affected negatively by cancel culture. In fact, you would say that most people got really famous as a result of being seen as edgy
Mhm.
and got bigger crowds. There were some people that had things happen to them, but it's pretty small compared to like how much money it actually generated to be seen as someone, saying things that you're not supposed to say. So that always felt false to me. And I'm in comedy clubs. People are, they're basically saying most anything they want to say. And I think that some guardrails are good. It forces you to be creative. And I always quote Colin Quinn, who said, you can say anything you want as long as you're willing to stand behind it.
Right.
So if you want to be thoughtless and dumb, someone's going to criticize you. And comics are, I think, pretty thin-skinned about taking
Very,
criticism.
very much so.
They'll criticize everyone and pretty brutally, and they'll name names. But
Yeah.
if you come at them at all, they
Yeah.
literally throw
Yeah.
a fit and lose
Yeah.
their minds in
They
a
do.
kind of almost comical way.
Yeah.
Um,
You're 100% right about
and
that. That's
Obviously, our whole country is based on that you should be allowed to say anything you want to say as long as it doesn't create some sort of dangerous situation. We need South Park. We
Right.
need, voices that are, fighting power. And,
Right.
some of those voices are going to be terrible and have bad opinions.
Mhm.
That's part of it too. If you
What-
want to
what-
have all the comedy out there, you're going to have the bad stuff also.
Well, the political climate is tough, though. And but one of the things is, how do you think about sort of right-wing meme comedy, MAGA humor? I mean, you joked that the funnier in 2016, the funnier presidential candidate always wins. After you won, you even told the New
Yeah.
York Times that, well, Trump has a demented sense of humor. He was way funnier than Hillary Clinton. Although I would
Yeah.
argue the private Hillary Clinton is very funny.
Yeah.
And now she's funny again. She's funny publicly now. I just had Bernie Sanders on. We were talking about this. One of the things Trump is really good at is he normalizes racism by delivering it as entertainment. His humor can make all the horrific things in his administration seem less scary and dangerous. The pooping slop video that he did, the AI video, was a version of that. Do you think that's effective still? Is it funny, or what is it? Is it changing people's idea? And that's what their excuse is all the time. It's just funny. It's really not funny.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reason why people like Hillary Clinton weren't funny is that they are afraid to say certain things. They're afraid to take the comedic risk that it'll be taken the wrong way. So as a result, they seem like they're covering, like they're being they're controlling their expression. And Trump is just pure expression. And so you look even more full of it when people can see your eyes thinking, I don't want to get in trouble, I don't want to get in trouble, I don't want to get in trouble. And then you get a real muted version of yourself. And people feel like there's something to not be trusted in that self-censorship. Now, some people would call that trying to be thoughtful or
Taste.
dignity.
Dignity, yeah.
But I think that's what they're sensing, where Trump's like, nah, I'm going on 10, 24 hours a day. And then it
Right.
all loses its power. And
Right.
so then he can say the worst things or put up the dumbest memes, and everyone's like, well, that doesn't mean anything.
Mhm.
But it means something if your healthcare disappears. It means something if
Mhm.
you're at work and you're from Mexico and you're a legal immigrant and they put you in a camp.
So is changing it to entertainment effective? Is that worrisome to you?
My feeling is that it's always more complicated than we know. I don't think this memification is based on someone's instinct. I think there's think tanks and psychological studies, and everything that's being done is being done because it has been proven to work as propaganda. And we take it like, oh, he's being crazy, and I can't believe he said that, or I can't believe he posted that. But I think there's literally like psychiatrists figuring out, how do you make people lose hope? How do you make people think that they can't win a fight?
Right. And then tell
I
them
think
it's
that
just a joke. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it all started with, the Cambridge Analytica, like
Mhm.
when we realize, oh, they know what we think before we even think it based on
Correct.
our behaviors online. And yeah, they're flooding the zone and everyone's brain is melting. And then even though there's millions of people on the street, Trump poops on him,
Mhm.
and it's supposed to make everyone feel sad. Like, well, no one listened. So that's why it's important for everybody to just continue to fight, to speak up, to find ways to support candidates and organizations you believe in spite of the fact that people want to humiliate you and make you feel hopeless.
I want to finish up by talking about what you're working on and what's next for you personally. You've made multiple documentaries in the past few years that take a deeper look at some of the great comedians of the last few generations. You made films about your longtime mentor, Garry Shandling, George Carlin, friendships between Bob Newhart and Don Rickles. You've said you find it more enjoyable and less stressful than making comedy. I'd love to know um, what you think of it. And you have multiple projects in the work. You said you're working on a film about the late Norm Macdonald. You're putting finishing touches on a documentary about Mel Brooks. You're working on a comedy about country western music. I happen to love country western music. Talk about this shift to documentary work.
Well, yeah, I'm going to make a feature comedy next year with Glenn Powell, and but documentaries are just really fun, and I think it is also an extension of me writing a article, a paper about the Marx Brothers that no one requested. I love the history of it, and I think it's really fun to look at someone's life and their work and try to create a documentary that really captures who they are, what their personal journey was, and how it related to the art that they put into the world. So I just finished up with my friend Michael Bonfiglio, a documentary about Mel Brooks called The 99-Year-Old Man that'll be on HBO in January. And it was, a great opportunity to talk to Mel Brooks in a deep way about what he's seen over the last century. I mean, he lived through the Depression and he fought in World War II and he fought the Nazis and then he mocked the Nazis and he fought racism and, changed comedy forever. But he also is a brilliant man, and just to ask him, how did it feel? What did you go through in your journey? And I find that to be, just as fulfilling as scripted fare and less stressful, because whenever you make a movie, you never know if the jokes will work. So the whole time you make it, you're like, man, I hope I'm not crazy and people will laugh at this. But when you make a documentary, you're not in constant terror of humiliation.
And you get to talk to Mel Brooks, who's just a legend.
So I really love the form. And as someone who loves comedy, I love going through every interview Mel Brooks ever did and looking for these hilarious things that no one has seen in 30, 40 years.
Well, that one where he's singing with, whatchamacallit, Anne Bancroft.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. And to be or not to be.
Yeah. So toward the end of the book, you write that your career, quote, was a desperate cry for help from a person that never feels whole, whose pain and trauma never eases, and who needs to numb himself with busyness and accomplishment. Ow. Ow. You seem to have a lovely family, by the way. So I'm sort of like, but you also write, underneath all the healthy and unhealthy reasons for working, expressing myself, is a love for comedy and the people who make it. What does that mean for the next, about you and the next iteration for your characters? What do the characters in This Is 50 look like, I guess? Or 60?
Well, I always think about, there's a healthy reason to work. There's a healthy reason to want to make movies and TV, to connect with people, to reveal yourself, to explore how you think about life. And then there's the unhealthy part that's just needy and broken and wanting approval. And unfortunately, the broken part is the engine a lot of the time. And I think as you get older and hopefully saner, that part of the engine starts going away. And you start making the primary motivation to express yourself and to connect with people and to find something to say. So, hopefully there's always new subjects to write about and deeper places to dig to find comedy. I mean, life is so weird. It couldn't be weirder now. And everybody needs someone to help process all we're going through. So, it's just a search for a story that can illuminate some of this.
Is it still out of pain for you? As we started, is it still out of a place of pain, or has it shifted into something else? I mean, again, you have a wonderful family, it seems.
It's definitely not what it was when I was young. And I also think when you're young, you're just nuts. I think you're genetically crazy. And it's something probably Scott Galloway talks about all the time. You just have this need to prove yourself and to figure out your place in the world and to survive. And that goes away.
But he's an open wound. Let's be clear. He's an open wound, but
exactly.
Go ahead.
Well, I would just like to say it really clearly. I'm more mature than Scott.
Okay,
I don't know
good.
how much more mature.
Low bar.
But so this next phase of my career, I call 15% healthier than Scott.
Okay,
which
good.
still gives you a lot of energy.
Gives you a lot of energy. So, my last question, what do you find funny now then? What is, if you're looking about your long history as a comedy nerd, what do you nerd out on right now?
What am I nerding out on? There's a great show on Hulu called Such Brave Girls, which is just this gem comedy I recommend people watch. I do love what Josh Johnson is doing. I love what South Park did this year. They really don't want to talk politics that directly. And the fact that they made the choice to do it because they felt it was necessary was incredible. And it's really funny. And it's about how the world is changing and everything that's terrifying about it. I thought that, to see the two of them, do, work that's as great as their greatest work is remarkable. I thought that was really inspiring, just how strong that season was. So there's always things to nerd out on.
Are you going to make a Marx Brothers movie? Documentary?
I don't think I will. I think that's sacred ground. It's sacred ground.
Okay. That would be great. They were geniuses. They were fucking geniuses. They were. Anyway, thank you so much, Judd. I really enjoyed the book. It's a really wonderful book. And it did remind me of that SNL book that we talked about before.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Today's show is produced by Christian Castor-Russell, Kateri Yoakum, Michelle Alloy, Megan Burney, and Kaylin Lynch. Nishat Kurwa is Vox Media's executive producer of podcasts. Special thanks to Annika Robbins. Our theme music is by Trackademics. If you're following this show, you are Harpo Marx. But if not, monkeys are flying out of your butt. Thanks for watching. See you on Thursday.